Welcome to Haunted Talks, the official podcast of the Haunted Walk, offering ghost tours and paranormal adventures in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, Ontario, and online experiences to anyone in this mortal realm. My name is Jim Dean. I am the creative director, and we really appreciate you joining us for today's episode. What beastly tales of otherworldly creatures used to keep you awake as a child? A Bigfoot animal lurking in the woods, ready to snatch unaware hikers out enjoying the day? A blood-sucking vampire huddling in the darkness, awaiting their next juicy victim? A sea monster hiding below the depths of the water, rarely to reveal itself? Or a human-animal hybrid that aggressively stalks its prey, always hungry for its next meal? These aren't just stories to terrify children. They are real nightmares for people of all ages. Sometimes, tales of these creatures can keep even the bravest of us up all night. But most of us are comforted by the thought that these unimaginable horrors of our worst nightmares are just that: dreams, fictional stories, folklore. They aren't scientifically documented, and most of them seem to be too full of fantasy to be true. Something that someone with a twisted imagination conjured up to scare people. However, and you might not want to hear this, some of these stories of beastly creatures stalking humans are based on real-life events. There are sightings of these fantastical creatures across the globe, some of which have never been adequately debunked or explained away by science. It's these stories that should keep you up at night. Today, we are going to examine a story that seems straight out of a fantasy novel, some tall tale that sounds like pure horror fiction. Or, at the very least, a story that's ripe for debunking and explanations of a more logical nature. It's a tale about a vicious monster that no one had seen before, something so difficult to describe that no one has ever fully explained it. The harrowing descriptions from multiple witnesses defy any single cause. Despite many theories over the last 250 years, no satisfactory explanation has ever been found, leaving many to wonder if this fanciful-sounding beast is actually humanity's worst nightmare made real. But before we get to that, in our last episode, I shared with you the first of our 3 new experiences this spooky season, and that's Ghosts of Queen's University, our tour of the famous campus in Kingston, Ontario. And that tour is already up and running, and it's just so rewarding to see guests already joining us and having a great time as we get to share these new stories we've never shared before. Well, if you've been following us on social media, you're probably aware we've launched the other 2 experiences as well. The first is A Night at the Mausoleum at Beechwood Cemetery. Beechwood Cemetery is Ottawa's historic cemetery, also known as Canada's cemetery, as its huge sprawling grounds are also home to our national military cemetery. We are thrilled that this October we are going to be giving walking tours of the grounds, sharing some of the best ghost stories and eerie tales connected to the place, and of course, those that rest there. We're only offering this tour in the month of October, so you're not going to want to miss that. If you're anywhere in or around Ottawa, that is a must-do this Halloween season, and tickets are going extremely quickly. So if you're interested, be sure to get them soon. Our other experience that we have just launched is Toronto's Haunted Harbour. Now, this is a unique one, as we're collaborating with our friends at Pirate Life Theatre. This is going to be a boat tour of Lake Ontario that includes the best ghost stories connected to the water and the Toronto Islands right in that area. That one is also selling very quickly and will also only be available in October. All of this to say, if you have not booked your Halloween season tickets with us yet for any of our new experiences or our other amazing adventures you can go on in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, now is really the time before the pickings get slim. I'd like to invite you to join us. And don't forget, as a Haunted Talks listener, you can get 10% off all your ghost tour tickets on our website, which is hauntedwalk.com. For our listeners outside of Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, check out our Haunting at Home this spooky season, where we challenge you to conduct a series of paranormal experiments in your own home. A really thrilling, exciting evening. Information on the Haunting at Home can also be found on our website. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, all at Haunted Walk. And 2 easy ways you can help support us and the show is to leave a 5-star review wherever you listen. We always enjoy reading those reviews. And to recommend Haunted Talks, particularly at this spooky time of year, to friends, family, or anyone you know interested in the spooky things we cover here. To tell this story, we must go all the way back to 18th century France. Let's set the scene. A quiet and quaint region where people lived on farms and in small villages where everyone knew everyone. The pastoral region of France, known as Gévaudan, located in the south-central part of the country, was home to many small communities that served a largely rural population. The small pockets of people dotted throughout the province formed collectives that helped everyone survive the unforgiving mountainous terrain. Like many peasants throughout Europe at the time, the residents of Gévaudan were living day to day, getting by on the land. Some would call it a simple life. It was predictable and routine. But everything was about to change in these sleepy southern French villages. It was the summer of 1764, and a young woman was tending to her family's cattle herd in the hills. Without any warning, she was suddenly attacked by a large, vicious beast. She described it as being like a wolf, yet not a wolf. These words would later become iconic, capturing the confused horror of people all over France. Her vague and brief description would be on the tongues of many over the next few years and held some early clues about the nature of this monster. She survived the attack thanks to some bulls in her herd that managed to scare the beast away. But future victims wouldn't be so lucky. Another girl, Jean Boulet, was attacked soon after. Her death was tragic and unexpected, but the significance of the event wasn't apparent until years later. It is now accepted that she was the first official victim of what would become known as the Beast of Gévaudan. After her death, reports of sudden and horrific attacks by a beastly creature quickly skyrocketed. It didn't take too long for a panic to spread across the region. Gruesome tales traveled by word of mouth, and soon everyone was on high alert. And for good reason. The beast was striking at an alarming rate, with reported attacks and killings coming every week. Some accounts were carefully recorded and passed from person to person, and their similarities were striking. People in the region were fairly used to wolves stalking small farm animals and even children, but this was different. Almost all the surviving victims and witnesses described a similar type of animal, a large wolf-like creature that was clearly not a wolf, but was otherwise undeterminable. No one had seen anything quite like it before. Not only did it not really look like a wolf, but its behavior was also very odd. Wolf attacks were relatively common during this time, but they usually stayed away from cattle. Wolves also rarely attacked grown adults, and instead focused their attention on children or smaller people. The beast, on the other hand, killed indiscriminately. While children were the most common victim, large, full-grown adults were being harassed and killed as well. The beast showed no fear. The attacks were especially cruel, and surviving victims described a horrifying ordeal. The animal would relentlessly stalk and attack them, allowing very little time or space for escape. Although it seemed to work alone, away from a family unit or pack, there was no hope of outrunning the creature. Those that were killed routinely had their throat ripped out, and there was evidence of huge, sharp teeth on their bodies. Sometimes the corpses were carried away and devoured by the beast. Other times, the act of killing was enough, and the deceased person was left behind. While it can be hard to separate fact from fiction in some of these accounts, it's quite clear that something was terrorizing these people in a region that was quite accustomed to wolves. They knew that something wasn't right. The locals weren't standing down and were determined to take back their province. Hunting parties were sent out, and some even came face to face with the beast. One group carefully cornered the animal, muskets raised, and a kill shot was clearly within sight. The group fired a volley of bullets, sure that one would hit the mark and their terror would finally be over. There must have been some cheers when the beast fell, but it was only for a moment. Before anyone could fire a second shot, the beast got up and ran away, barely limping as it disappeared into the forest. By early 1765, the story had finally caught the attention of King Louis XV. Recently, a boy had valiantly fought off the beast, saving the lives of numerous children. He was awarded a special prize by the king, but more importantly for the villagers, they were reassured that help was finally on the way. The king arranged for two famous wolf hunters to travel to Gévaudan. While there was some agreement among the king's advisors that the creature must be a wolf, most people in the area were adamant that this was different. They were determined that hunting the beast required something extra. But the wolf hunters confidently went about their business, culling the local wolf population as they went. As the numbers of regular wolves dwindled, the beast's attacks continued and became more frequent through the spring of 1765. Frustrated by the lack of progress, the two wolf hunters were sent home, with nothing to show for their efforts. The king then sent Francois Antoine, the lieutenant of the hunt, to dispose of the beast. He was famous for his dramatic hunting parties and trophy kills, but he was elderly at this point, and few expected he could take on such a difficult task. It took him a few months, but eventually, Antoine found his mark: a massive 130-pound wolf. He proudly shot the animal, which was later stuffed and put on display. He received royal accolades, prize money, and the praise of the Parisian court when he returned. The problem was, the attacks of Gévaudan continued. In fact, they got worse. Either Antoine had only shot one of multiple beasts, or he got the wrong one. Whatever the case, the villages in Gévaudan were still under siege, and now the king was ignoring their plight, claiming that Antoine had been successful in his endeavor. There was a good reason to believe the beast was dead. Antoine had not only killed the large wolf, but had also found its female companion and two juveniles that were said to be growing even bigger than the father. Some people must have wondered if the new attacks were simply a regular wolf doing the rounds. But, according to villagers, the attacks were still strikingly vicious and growing in frequency. This creature was noticeably bolder, even more terrifying than the previous beast. It wasn't quietly stalking its victims anymore. It certainly wasn't afraid of cattle or grown adults. It attacked people at random, but still followed a clear, horrifying pattern. As more people fell victim to the strange animal, terror flooded the province once again. A massive outbreak of attacks in the spring of 1767 prompted the locals to act on their own. If the king wasn't going to help them, they would find the beast themselves. A hunting party was arranged, determined to kill the beast once and for all. On June 19th, a local gunned down a massive animal. Little is known about what exactly happened on that day, but has since taken on folkloric proportions. Some say that the shooter received special guidance from the heavens. Others say he forged bullets with religious relics so he could receive divine intervention. Special bullets to kill a special type of beast, I'm sure you've heard that one before. But most of these stories are just part of the fiction. Later add-ons made the reality more mythical. What we do know is that the hunter killed a large animal, and shortly afterwards, the terrible attacks seemed to stop. Most agreed that the beast that was killed was responsible for at least some of the deaths. When the animal was opened up, it was determined that there were human remains in its stomach, proof that it had killed people recently. But was it the last of the beasts? Was this the only one continuing to stalk the southern mountains of France? Or did the species just go into hiding after a successful hunt? Reported deaths by large wolf-like creatures stopped in Gévaudan after June 1767. There were no more outbreaks of attacks, and the terror that swept the villages over the past few years dissipated. Wolf attacks still happened, of course. In fact, no one was really surprised when a recognizable wild animal came into contact with humans, but no one reported the strange wolf-like creature again, at least not in Gévaudan. There is no clear breakdown of how many people were attacked and killed because of the beast. Since wolf attacks were fairly common, and there was no clear way to report and count every kill of the beast, it's nearly impossible to tally a final number. It was generally accepted for years that the beast was responsible for about 60 kills in over 100 attacks. But that might be a very conservative estimate. In fact, other studies have speculated that the beast might have killed over 500 people, spread over 600 attacks. It's much too difficult to separate the imaginative stories that were fueled by mass panic from those that were genuine attacks by an unknown creature, especially for us, centuries later. But regardless of the numbers, people living in Gévaudan in the 1760s had every reason to be afraid. Something horrifying was lurking in their midst. It didn't take long for the story to become folklore and take on a completely different appearance. As more writers began to explore the story, a common character began to emerge as a possible explanation: the werewolf. Tales of hybrid human and wolf creatures dominated European folklore in this period, and the Beast of Gévaudan was clearly not the first beast to be linked with a large wolf-like creature. While every region had their own version of the werewolf, what it did, what it looked like, where it came from, it was a much-feared beast throughout Europe, and universal fodder for many nightmares. At the time of the attacks, it doesn't appear that many people were identifying the beast as a potential werewolf. People were certain it wasn't a regular wolf. They didn't know what else it could be. However, the story has all the parts needed for a classic werewolf tale. You have a large beast in the shape of a wolf that is especially bold and vicious. It attacks indiscriminately and survives regular bullets after being shot multiple times. As the story was told from one person to the next, traveling by word of mouth, elements were added to make it all that more fantastical. Soon, the Beast of Gévaudan became a classic werewolf tale filled with more fiction than fact. But what are the other explanations? If the beast wasn't a regular wolf and wasn't considered to be a werewolf at the time, what could it have been? Numerous theories have been developed over the years. The most common explanation is that it was indeed a wolf, albeit a different type than the villagers in southern France were used to. Some speculate it could have been a large wolf suffering from a disease like rabies that made it especially vicious and violent. Others think it may have migrated from deeper in the mountains, where larger wolves were more common. While the people living in Gévaudan were determined it wasn't a wolf, it did remind them of one. So perhaps the simplest explanation is the real answer. If it wasn't a wolf, there are still other intriguing possibilities. Some have wondered if it was a large feline, such as a type of mountain lion. Most large felines were extinct in Europe by this time, but perhaps a family had survived in the mountains, away from human contact. People have also wondered if it was a remnant of some prehistoric or ancient animal that managed to survive largely undetected in the dense woods, which is very similar to what people wonder about in regards to Bigfoot sightings. And then there are a few people who think the beast was actually a human. After all, some witnesses did describe a beast that was closer to human than animal, with even some saying that it could walk upright. Maybe a fanatical serial killer was stalking southwestern France, disguising themselves as a beast to avoid detection. That explanation certainly adds to the nightmare. While there is no shortage of wild theories, there's never been a single explanation that completely makes sense. Hundreds of years ago, the people of Gévaudan were divided. Even in the midst of so much terror, no one agreed on a single cause. Potential explanations have only exploded since, and people continue to remain baffled. If anything, the number of theories has only grown, but people remain drawn to one of the most fantastical explanations. The werewolf theory was created by writers who never witnessed the events, years after the events took place. But it's an explanation that continues to hold our attention. Is that because it has all the classic hallmarks of a werewolf tale, where a frightening beast that is too large to be a wolf starts randomly attacking unsuspecting humans until it's finally brought down by divine intervention? Or do we go to a mythical explanation in the hopes that it was all just some overactive imaginations fueled by too much hype and we're secretly hoping that it was just some large wolf attacks after all. Because what if it wasn't? And what if they didn't actually kill the beast? Or there was more than one? An entire pack hiding out in the forest? What if this fantastical sounding creature, or its descendants, are still lurking in the woods of southern France, or somewhere else, waiting for the right moment to strike again? Next time you head out into the wilderness, particularly as we draw closer to Halloween, pay close attention to your surroundings, listening for sounds or signs of something not quite human that could be stalking you in the woods. Thanks again for joining us for this episode, and we really hope to see you out on one of our ghost tours or paranormal adventures in the month of October. There is no better time, and we are waiting for you with so many great ghost stories and adventures to share. Information for our 3 new experiences, Ghosts of Queen's University, Tales from the Mausoleum at Beechwood Cemetery, and Toronto's Haunted Harbour, as well as all of our ghost tours, paranormal investigations, and paranormal adventures in and around Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, can all be found on our website, which is hauntedwalk.com. And don't forget to use that Haunted Talks promo code at checkout to get 10% off all your ghost tour tickets. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, all at Haunted Walk. And if you have a moment to leave us a 5-star review, that is greatly appreciated. And if you know anyone else in your life who enjoys the spooky content we love to share and discuss here, we'd be honored if you could recommend the show to them. As always, a special thanks to our Haunted Talks team, including Brittany Buss, who researched and wrote this episode, and Michelle Dennis, our outstanding audio editor. Until we meet again, sweet dreams.